When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
A very warm welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. A very busy 3 hours coming up. We start with the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. In tonight's show, we'll be asking, what should Rishi Sunak's top 3 priorities be? What do you think? The NHS, stop the boats, the economy? Let me know. Also, is Scottish independence now dead in the water in the absence of Nicola Sturgeon? Are second homes morally wrong, and should we do more to support the Great British High Street? Lots to get through. It's the People's Hour, but first, my favourite person, Tatiana Sanchez with the headlines.
Mark, thank you. Right back at you. The UK says it's ready to support countries which can provide fighter jets to Ukraine. The Prime Minister made the commitment after addressing the Munich Security Conference, where he urged world leaders to act now and double down on military support. Rishi Sunak said the West's response to Russia hasn't been strong enough, and to win the war, Ukraine needs more artillery, armoured vehicles and air defence.
What I've done is say to all allies that we stand ready to support them if they can provide fighter jets to Ukraine now. And for our part, we're also leading the world in training Ukrainian pilots on NATO standard aircraft. That's the right thing to do, because this is about giving Ukraine the means to defend themselves and win this war. That's about more air defence, it's about armoured vehicles, it's about long-range weapons. The UK is out in front in all of these things, and it's important that we continue to do so and lead, because we all want to see Ukraine succeed.
The Prime Minister also said a deal with the European Union on fixing issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol is by no means done. Rishi Sunak held talks with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on the sidelines of the summit, described as a positive discussion. The leaders said intense work was still needed at official and ministerial levels, and they agreed to remain in close contact over the coming days.
I'm working very hard together with my ministerial colleagues, foreign secretaries in the audience, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. We are working very closely together. We're engaging in those conversations with the European Union.
Next week, potentially?
All the time, and we have been for a while. But what I'd say is there is still work to do. I think there is still work to do. There are still challenges to work through. We have not resolved all these issues. No, there isn't a deal that has been done.
The death toll, nearly 2 weeks after the Turkey earthquake, has climbed to more than 46,000. Former Premier League footballer Christian Atsu is among the lives lost. His agent confirming his body was found under the rubble of his home. Rescue efforts are continuing. This morning, a child was among 3 people saved 296 hours after the first quake hit. And one of the UK's richest people, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, has confirmed his company Ineos has joined the race to buy Manchester United. He's competing with Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, the chairman of one of Qatar's biggest banks, to acquire the club from the Glazer family. Sir Jim says he wants to make United the #1 club in the world again. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We start with the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Tonight, the stars of the show are Robin in St Albans. Lovely Verulamium, some Roman treasure there. We've got Sue in Cheshire, bookkeeper to the stars. Fergus in Greenwich, who is a master orator. Andrew in Essex, the perpetual dropper of the truth bombs. And Norma in the Canary Islands, who brings a warm glow to the show. We'll be hearing lots from them over the next hour. In tonight's programme, we'll be asking, what should Rishi Sunak's top 3 priorities be? Also, in the absence of Nicola Sturgeon, is Scottish independence dead in the water? Is it over now for an independent Scotland? Also, what about this one? Are second homes morally wrong? And should we do more to support the great British High Street? Helping me navigate those stories are not just my star viewers, but the king of Fleet Street himself, and of course, radio legend Mike Porky Parry. After 9, in my big opinion, an adult, biologically male trans woman has been allowed to play cricket against 12-year-old girls. You couldn't make it up. I'm beginning to think the West deserves to fall. In the big question, should assisted dying be a human right? Plus, tomorrow's Sunday papers from 10:20 right through until 11. And in my take at 10, woke idiots are rewriting the classic works of Roald Dahl in a story that even he couldn't make up. So this is Mark Dolan Tonight. It's Saturday night. Let's have some fun and let's have a right royal debate as well. Put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle and let's have a night to remember. It's time for the People's Hour. Inflation is still too high. Record numbers of small boats are crossing the channel, and soon the French could be outdoing us militarily. God forbid. What is going on? So, how do we solve these crises? What should Rishi Sunak's top 3 priorities be? Mike Porky Parry is with me, the sage of Fleet Street.
Yeah.
He's got his top 5. What do you think of the top 3?
Right, I've got a list of 20 here, but I'm going to pick out 3 out of 20. The very first thing that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has got to do, because we're 2 or 3 weeks away from the next financial statement, quotes the budget, he's got to cut corporation tax from the ridiculous high of 25%, which he wants. It's 19% now. And we've got to go down and match Ireland's corporation tax at 12%. We're already seeing countries cancelling plans to invest and build in Great Britain to go to Ireland. Surely that's a huge, huge cry, isn't it, to say if you want to be open to business from around the world, including AstraZeneca, then you give them tax advantages. It's all very well having a moral conscience about raising tax, but remember, those who create wealth in this world will just go elsewhere.
And competitive tax rates are what Brexit was all about. We were supposed to have the tax advantage. Jeremy Corbyn said, oh, Britain's going to become Singapore on sea.
Yes.
That was supposed to be a criticism. I thought, bring it on.
Singapore on sea, if we were, would make us one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And all we're doing now, Brexit was supposed to dislocate us from what I call the socialist pact of high tax. We wanted to get away from the socialist club and pact of high tax and set our own taxes. What do? We come out and we're putting it up from 19, which was quite a competitive rate. That was better than the United States. That was better than most countries in Europe. And now to leapfrog at 25. It's outrageous. Don't they realise that, and this is a truism of all taxes, if you lower taxes, generally speaking, you bring in more money. When Mrs Thatcher got in, the highest rate of tax for the individual was like 84%. She got it down to 40%, and all of a sudden, revenues trebled.
Michael, I tend to agree with you, but can I put a spanner in the works?
Of course.
How will these tax cuts be paid for, given that we've got a deficit, which means that every month more goes out than comes in? We've got a national debt of over $2 trillion, and we've got inflation. Wouldn't these tax cuts be inflationary and costly?
No, because if you attract people to this country to create wealth, they pay taxes on this wealth. It annoys me all the time. Over the last couple of weeks, we've heard about record profits for mostly energy firms, Centrica and the people who own them, British Gas, all that kind of stuff, BP, Shell.
Absolutely.
But what people don't point out is that they're already paying tax of up to 75% with the windfall taxes. And about 75 or 80% of what they earn is from around the rest of the world anyway. It's not here, you know what I mean?
Correct.
So what I'm saying is, don't please try and tell people not to come to Britain. So, to answer your question more succinctly, if more companies come to Britain because they're only paying 12% corporation tax, they will invest, employ more people, and all those people will pay tax. It will give us greater revenues, not less.
Indeed. Well, listen, if taxes get too high in this country, we risk losing Mike Porky Parry, and that must never be allowed to happen. Let's get the views of Fergus now. Fergus, how are you, and good evening?
Oh, I'm great, thanks. You can tell why Mike's a star, can't you? I was listening to him, and everything he says is right. Of course. It's obvious. But anyway, that's not the things I was going to cover. I'm very happy. My top three of Rishi... The whole list tonight is so good. I wrote about 10 paragraphs and sent them in. I then did research. I researched very heavily. I used to work for a drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre as a volunteer, close to Belmarsh Prison, of which I'm sure you've heard. Now, Belmarsh has people who come to the rehabilitation centres in shackles, not shekels, and they're strapped up. So I have to give full credit to my mate Chris, who I talked to tonight, who knows all about the people in Belmarsh and what the problems are with, believe it or not, Albanians. And the Rishis, he told me another thing. I don't know if you know about broken window theory. The original broken window theory was 18th century by Frederick Bastiat. Forget that one. It was redone in 1982 by Wilson and Kelly. And they said, they use it as a metaphor. If there's a broken window in a street and it doesn't get repaired, then people notice, and another window gets broken, and another window gets broken.
I love your broken window philosophy. I'm going to interrupt you because we want to hear every word. We're having trouble with your audio focus, Fergus. So please allow our team to reach out. You can't hear me and I can't hear you. Fergus, we're going to fix your audio. Mike Porky Parry, I'm getting a lot of emails from viewers saying that, yes, they agree with you about taxes, but they also want to stop the boats. Illegal migration is a deal breaker. I've had one particular email in from a lady called Beverly, and she says 3 challenges for the Prime Minister: stop the boats, and stop the boats.
Yes.
Your reaction to that?
My reaction?
Yeah. Is she a bad person for thinking that?
No. That is absolutely right. Now, this brings me on to what I was going to say is my second consideration for the top 3 for Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. So thank you to that viewer for coming on this. The only way you do that is to immediately announce we are coming out of the European Court of Human Rights, OK? Yeah. We have to, because whilst they still have the drop on anything we do in this country, we are done for. European Court of Human Rights is big profile. I'm not sure people also pay enough attention to the Human Rights Act, Mark, that we got into after Tony Blair came into power in '97. Yeah. The Human Rights Act in this country, which is allied to the European Court of Human Rights, was introduced in '98. And wasn't it quite surprising that Tony Blair's wife, Miss Sherry Blair, a lawyer, then actually specialised in human rights issues? I'm not saying for a moment that there's anything duplicitous about that. What I'm saying is it was seen to be a major issue. Well, the major issue at the time was to help people. The major issue now is that it's being abused very, very badly to help people get into Britain who don't deserve to be here.
Absolutely right. The Human Rights Act was a disaster because it stopped Home Secretaries sending terrorists and rapists out of this country and back to their country of origin. That can't be right in a sovereign nation like the United Kingdom. And post-Brexit, we should expect that. Well, look, let's speak to Sue now. Sue, how are we? And good evening.
Good evening.
Your priorities for Rishi Sunak. I've got this from Jeffrey, who's just messaged me. Scrap net zero, restore confidence in the economy after the disaster of the COVID response, slash public debt and reduce the public sector. What would you do? You, of course, are a bookkeeper, so you're all about the numbers, Sue.
Yeah. My first one would be to stop the boats. And not only do they need to get a grip on stopping the boats, they also need to get a grip on returning people when they come here. People who come over think that as long as they set foot in England, they won't. There's very little chance of them being sent back. So we've got to change that image for a start. I think we ought to be passing laws that say that if you don't claim asylum when you get here, you can't claim it later on. And I think the other thing was, I've forgotten now.
Well, could I offer you a suggestion, Sue? What about the Australian rule, the Australian law, which is that if you enter the country illegally, you will never be granted asylum?
Well, I think, I thought that was one of the things that they were going to put through anyway, that if you enter illegally, you never get a chance to stay. And I think that if you turn up as well with no documentation, unless you've come directly from a war-torn country, because sometimes you have to, get out as quick as you can and you don't have time to pick up all your bits and pieces. But if you come here with no documents, you'll be detained until we get documents to return you home. I think, we've got to be really, really hot on this, and I'd have 2 teams of civil servants working on this. One would deal solely with the boat people coming in, and the others can deal with the other asylum seekers that they're ploughing through anyway.
Sue, fascinating points. Let's bring Robin in. He is in St Albans. Robin, so far we've had the economy and taxes. We've had the small boats. Have we left anything off the list?
Yes, a couple of things. Obviously, inflation. Inflation at the moment is still above 10. He's got to get that down to 5 very, very soon, because that will help with all the negotiations with all of the the striking workers, etc.
But that is being looked after, isn't it?
They'll be able to afford to. To pay them. The other thing that I had on my list was he still needs to clean house. I'm still very concerned that he immediately stood on the steps when he was voted in and said that he was all for integrity, etc. And he brought back Suella Braverman straight away. So I found that a little disappointing in him. But I think that's one of the things he needs to sort out. No more Tory corruption. It needs to be sorted immediately the moment its head rises.
Indeed. Well, look, I think many will echo your sentiment there, Robin. This from Rex: scrap net zero, deport illegal immigrants, and stop funding Ukraine's military. A lot of people are saying, and this is symptomatic, Robin, for Sally: grow a pair, find a spine and resign. Sally, like many of my viewers and listeners, just isn't having Rishi Sunak. I think he's got potential. I think that he's undervalued. But what's your view on the Sunak factor himself?
No, I absolutely think he's got value. He's a very intelligent man. I do genuinely believe he has a heart as well. And that, and I do genuinely believe he works probably 24/7 to help this country. He gets a lot of criticism for not being Boris and being out and being jovial with everybody on the high street, etc. But I think what he's doing with Jeremy Hunt is he's really working on trying to save this economy, because we are in a mess. And 18 months from now, Labour will march straight in unless something is done.
Let's bring Norma into the conversation from the Canary Islands. She's had her third sangria of the evening and she's ready. Hi, Norma. I think she's fallen asleep on her parasol.
There you go.
No! Norma, have we forgotten anything? What else is on your list that the Prime Minister ought to focus on? Many people are saying that one of his tasks should be to sack Jeremy Hunt.
Oh gosh, that's a question out of the blue. I have very mixed feelings on Jeremy Hunt. I think that there's, from one point of view, he is probably being victimised, but on the other hand, having been bullied myself in the workplace, I'm really not sure. Jeremy Hunt, the jury's out.
Fair enough. In that case, what are your top three priorities? What matters to you, Norma?
What, with respect to what?
To the Prime Minister. What do you want most from the Prime Minister? Well, if you could pluck three things out of the air, economy, NHS, small boats, the woke stuff, what matters to you?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is the poor people who really don't have the means to survive. And they don't seem to be getting any help whatsoever. And it really pains me that people, that living good lives like me, all these people, and I hear about these people who are really, really suffering for no fault of their own, and they're not getting any help whatsoever. I mean, he says they're getting help, but they're not. And they're suffering, like now. And they can't wait like 2 minutes, even a day, 2 days or whatever for some bill to be passed or some legislation to occur or something like that. I mean, people are really, really suffering. People living in truly, truly damp conditions with water dribbling down the walls, cockroaches everywhere, rented accommodation. I mean, these people are suffering, and a huge amount of people are suffering in England now. It's a disaster.
Norma, you are so right.
Do something about that.
You are so right to highlight the plight of people in this country living in substandard accommodation, often with small kids. Good on you for that. Well, lots to come. Let's say hi to all of the members of the People's Panel tonight. There you go. They are getting it done, bringing some strong opinions alongside TV, radio and Fleet Street legend Mike Porky Parry. I'll be asking my panellists the following questions between now and 9 o'clock. Are second homes morally wrong? Should we do more to save the Great British High Street? But next, in the absence of Nicola Sturgeon, is Scottish independence dead in the water? See you in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very big reaction online to our question tonight in the People's Hour. What should Rishi Sunak's 3 priorities be? What matters most to you? Is it the NHS? Is it defence? Is it policing? This from Helen, who says, number 1, migration. Number 2, going all in on the culture war. A, because it's the right thing to do, and B, it's affecting everything and everybody. And C, or number 3, tax cuts and NHS reform. Louise says immigration, immigration, immigration. Mike Porky Parry is with me, radio and Fleet Street legend. Mike, what is your 3rd priority? You've talked about tax cuts.
Yes.
Your 2nd one was?
The immigration situation and ECHR, European Court of Human Rights. My 3rd one, and I'm amazed this has not come up yet during the whole course of the show, the defence budget in this country. We're reading only this week that France might now overtake us as the primary power in Europe We've always been there. We've got the special relationship with the United States. France don't even like NATO, do they?
No.
France have
They don't
tried
like
to
fighting either,
No,
do
they
they?
don't like fighting. They don't like NATO. Ever since Charles de Gaulle, they've tried to stay out of the greater embrace of NATO in case it upsets other people and all that kind of stuff. So we're learning this week that we're falling way behind in defence. Now, I know we've done extremely well with Ukraine, but that has only exposed the need for very, very strong defence. We're an island nation. Yeah. The Royal Navy is a disgrace. My father joined the Royal Navy in 1940 and we had 240 ships. We've now got barely 30, OK? We've got to put more money into it. And do you know what we can do? We can look at other spending in this country. The welfare state in this country is massively bloated.
Shocker.
And needs paring back. But what really worries me is that I'm told by people who know these things, and I live down on the south coast where Portsmouth is our major port, Poland could soon overtake us as a military power in Europe. Poland have only been their own country for the last 25 years. They were under the yoke of Soviet domination, and yet they've realised, because of where they are, they've got to put a lot of money into defending themselves. So should we.
Amen to that. I would probably look at the welfare budget. I'd have austerity in order to make sure that all of our citizens are safe. We are living in a dangerous world. More truth bombs there from Mike Parry, who's going to be contributing to the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls right through until 9. Let's talk about Scottish independence now. Nicola Sturgeon has resigned, and polls show a slight uptick for Scottish Labour. So it begs the question, in the absence of Sturgeon, is Scottish independence now dead in the water? Lots of people to speak to. Let's start, shall we, with Andrew, who joins us right now. Norma, first of all. Norma in the Canary Islands. Norma, what do you think? Is independence now a dead-in-the-water idea? Is it gone for a generation?
Well, without Sturgeon, there's not much chance of the argument being given any weight. I mean, it's lost its cheerleader. The argument for independence has become emotional, you know, like Brexit. In the short term, Scotland wouldn't be able to support its deficit. In the long term, they could turn it around, but who knows? With the purported failure of Brexit, this could have affected the mindset. Then there's the divide and rule argument. Even if it benefited Scotland economically, it could suffer more in terms of other variables, e.g. its access to intelligence, terrorism. It would have to reapply for membership to NATO, the UN, G7. And that's not a foregone conclusion. The border control, I mean, its biggest partner is England, and border controls would definitely adversely affect, you know, its trade. So, you know, dreams don't die, but they don't always come true. And probably without Sturgeon, the Scots may prefer to concentrate on all the domestic issues that Sturgeon ignored. And furthermore, you know, it's not a foregone conclusion that the EU would accept them, because Spain might vote against them, given its problems with Catalonia.
Indeed so. Of course, the SNP would argue that Scotland is being held back by being in the Union, and they would argue that, of course, Scotland was taken out of the EU against their will by the rest of the UK. Robin is in the delightful town of St Albans. Robin, do you think independence is dead in the water?
No, I don't. I think it's on the back burner for now. I do think that obviously there's going to be, they've got to find Nicola's replacement. I thought it was quite ironic a couple of weeks ago, she said how excited she was to fight on, and then suddenly with this trans debate, she's now suddenly got tired. But anyway, I think that once they've found the new leader, I'm sure it will come back on the agenda, because there's 50% roughly of the Scots who are actually in favour of independence, so it's not going to go away. But I think, as Norma's just said, they really need to fix the health, they need to fix the education, they need to sort out the drug issues they have before they start going on again about independence. They really need to get the country straight.
I think that's right. I've had so many emails from viewers north of the border saying they want a government that actually cares about the NHS and about crime and about schools, not about constitutional issues like Scotland's membership of the United Kingdom. Interesting thoughts from Norma and Robin. Let's bring Mike Porky Parry into this conversation. Mike, you were shaking your head in the course of that conversation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't want independence of Scotland to happen under any circumstances. I'm a unionist. We have been part of the greatest political power for hundreds of years. I'm talking about the United Kingdom, OK? It's been so successful, it's done us all well. Scottish engineers built the roads all over Great Britain. Logie Baird invented television. Carnegie went to America and invented steel. Scotland is full of brilliant people. They're even more brilliant if they're allied to the rest of the United Kingdom, OK? And as for Nicola Sturgeon, she never quite explained how her original plan to fund an independent Scotland was through North Sea oil, hundreds of billions of pounds, and then somewhere along the way decided, no, we're not going to rely on any more fossil fuels. No more drilling in the North Sea. What was going to fill that, like, £100 billion gap? How are you going to fund yourselves? Scotland couldn't possibly exist financially on its own. I don't want it to. Please remain part of the Union. We are greater together.
Robin, you're nodding your head there, but I don't know whether you supported Brexit, but I would argue that if you're a Brexit supporter, it's double standards not to support Scottish independence, because many of the themes are the same. Sovereignty, culture, history. Independence is just as good an argument for Brexit as it is for Scotland leaving the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Well, first off, I didn't support Brexit, so let's put that one to bed. And I absolutely do not support Scottish independence. But what I find quite funny is that they want independence and then they want to go back into the European Union, which means they are no longer independent. But I've had the same conversations with people in Ireland who claim they're independent, but they're actually in the European Union. So I'm not really sure. But
You're right. And also Ireland is increasingly falling into the pockets of enormous global corporations. And I'm allowed to say that because I'm a Dolan, so I can't get called racist. How about you, Norma? What do you think about that idea that there is an emotional argument for Scottish independence, exactly like there was for Brexit? Anyone who supported Brexit, who's against Scottish independence, is a hypocrite.
Yeah, it is an emotional argument. I mean, I have friends who want Scottish independence, and yet one of my friends said the reason for wars, the original reason for wars is the fence, that which divides us from them, and yet he supports Scottish independence, and that's the fence that divides us from them. It's illogical, totally.
It doesn't make sense. Well, look, we're going to continue this conversation. Plenty more sparks will fly between now and 9 o'clock. Don't forget, after 10, in my take at 10, when we start to censor books, you know society is in trouble. They've started rewriting Roald Dahl's books, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You couldn't make it up. Stay tuned for more big stories and big opinions. Don't forget, in the People's Hour, coming up, should we do more to support the Great British High Street? But next, with Mike Porky Parry and with my video calls, here's a big one for you. Are second homes morally wrong? See you in 3.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back to the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls. Now, towns like Whitby are being devastated by second home owners who rarely spend time there, sending house prices rocketing and local communities feeling the pinch. So it begs the question, are second homes immoral? Are they morally wrong? Let's speak to Andrew on that very subject. Andrew, good evening to you. Great to have you back on the show. What's your view? Now, this isn't people that buy a property to rent out as a business. This is a second home. This is somewhere in the countryside where you go at the weekend to drink, I don't know, Prosecco and eat caviar.
Prosecco?
Yes, so my perspective is second homes are actually wrong. So I've been doing some research on this area, looking at the likes of The Guardian and The Big Issue. And would you believe it? There are now 495,000 households that actually have second homes. Why? Because, you know, these people are actually being quite selfish, in my view. There are people like my students who are on the average between 18 and 25 who are struggling to get on the property ladder. And these people are taking homes and not actually living in them. You know, I'm very much about, you know, people being able to afford to be in their own home. So schemes like shared ownership, you know, enables a person to live in their own home in a cost-effective way. And this is what happened. You know, I like to holiday in the UK. I've got a dog, and here he is just coming to say hello. This is my boy Leo. And I used to like going on holiday before COVID, and we haven't been down there in a while, but we like to go on holiday down in St Ives in Cornwall. Cornwall has been colonised. There are properties there that are not being used. And then those that were able to buy before 2016, they rent them out and make a profit out of it. Obviously, it's a business, but there was an actual election by the council in St Ives which forbids 80% of St Ives residents forbid any purchase from someone outside of St Ives actually buying a property. Property is a lot cheaper down there. And, you know, I think people should be living in their own homes but in an area where they are willing to live. It would be nice. I can understand why some people they might do a home, but, as a business, but it's not fair for if there's someone who being outpriced. Property prices in St Ives is nowhere near as cheap as when I used to start going down there with an ex-partner back in 2014. And also, why are people allowed to do this? It should be local homes for local people. And also, to my students who are graduating with 60 grand's worth of debt, they are not necessarily going to be able to afford to buy in London. There should be more incentives, or in Essex, where I live. Yeah. There's other people who, buy these flats and then they make money. But why can people not invest in other things and give other people the choice?
You raised an interesting set of issues there, Andrew. I know your attention to detail is second to none. I can't necessarily stand up all of those stats that you've quoted. I'll take your word for it. But let's bring Fergus in, because Fergus, I think you disagree with Andrew. Andrew believes that we've got a housing crisis, therefore it is morally wrong for people to own more than one home.
I don't think it's morally wrong if they're actually going to spend a lot of time living in the home. Now, if they just buy it as an investment and it's only rented out in the summer, he's dead right. What happens? All the local shops close. Local people can't afford to live in their own area anymore. They can't afford to buy a property because the prices have gone so high up because they're being used as a rental property during the summer. Now, if they're going to live in the home, I'm speaking louder now. I've been told I've got to speak a lot louder. I've got to do my projection from the Royal Shakespeare Company. It's fascinating. I just drop in. All the topics today are interleaved. It's very clever. Mike's right, of course. A whole army would fit in less than Wembley Stadium. We need a strong police force. We need a strong army. We need a strong control of illegal immigration. All of those help us to be safer. That's number one. And also with the properties, you can't let people just, let's say, buy 20 houses in London as investment who come from some way away country, and all those properties, London's full of empty properties. It really is. No, never mind in the countryside, it's destroyed, but in London, whoa, no, you can't. I'm not jealous of people owning two houses, as long as they use them both properly.
OK, let's bring Mike Porky-Parry into this to react. Full disclosure, Mike, you do own one or two properties. You're a very successful entrepreneur, not only in broadcasting and in print, but you've bought some property. So what's your view on this?
I'm a property investor, so that's a different thing altogether. But I have a second home, and I have a second home in Suffolk on a place called Orwell Quay. You know,
can we get the address?
Well, not precisely.
You've got lots of fans, Mike.
Now, can I just tell you, it's built on a marina, and where I live, almost everybody who lives there, it's a second home to them. Now, what I'm saying is, Orwell Quay wouldn't exist without people who've moved out of the metropolis, London, or come from the north to have a second home in Orwell Quay in Suffolk, OK? So it brings enormous wealth to Suffolk. Suffolk isn't one of the richest counties in this country. It brings enormous wealth. People come down, they have to bring their cars, have to park them, they go to the restaurants in the local area, they use local facilities. Anybody who says you shouldn't have a second home is simply spouting the politics of envy. If you do well in life and you decide, I want somewhere else to live, you should do it. I take the point about Cornwall, but can I just say this? The people who run Cornwall County Council, must be the dimmest bunch of county councillors in the whole world. There's loads of space in Cornwall. I know the argument about local people can't afford to buy the little cottages in the little fishing villages that used to be owned by local people. Well, go and build a load more houses for the local people, because the others who come and invest are enriching and making Cornwall and Devon the wealthiest counties in this country. You should embrace it, because we all need to start getting wealthier and increase the wealth of the nation. We all benefit. If people go to Cornwall, they've got a second home, they need a gardener. They need somebody to wash their car. They need somebody to do the shopping for them. They need somebody to open a restaurant so they can go and eat there. Second homes are a very, very good thing.
OK, well, look, lots more to come. Let's say hello to the entirety of the guests on the People's Hour tonight. Here they all are. And they've all over-delivered tonight, I think you'll agree. We've got Norma and Andrew and Fergus, Mike Porky Parry, of course, my presenter's friend, and many, many more voices. So we look forward to debating the next big issue, and it's a simple one. Is the High Street dead, or can we still save it? Should we do more to support the Great British High Street? Don't forget, at 9 o'clock, in my big opinion, the ECB is letting a fully grown biological male that identifies as female play cricket against 12-year-old girls. You couldn't make it up. That's my big opinion at 9. But next up, should we save the High Street? See you in 3.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. At 9 o'clock, in my big opinion, the ECB are allowing a grown adult biological male who identifies as female to play cricket with 12-year-old girls. You couldn't make it up. I'll be dealing with that at 9 o'clock. But welcome back to the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Now, Marks & Spencer, WH Smith, Boots, these are all stores that are in crisis. Do market forces decide the fate of the Great British High Street, or will British ingenuity and hard work save the day? Is it time we did more to save the Great British High Street? Norma is here to discuss that from the Canary Islands, a Brit living in Spain. Norma, should we do more to save the High Street?
No. No, I don't live in Spain. I live in Italy.
But
Anyway.
Isn't that because Italians use the high street? Maybe we should be more loyal. I feel that as Brits, we go online and get the cheapest deal via Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, I applaud that. I mean, who cares? It's a free market. Let's move on. The high street is dead in its presentation. I mean, it's boring. They all look the same. They're all chains. The small shops have gone. The small, particular shops. People buy online now. Amazon may be the cause. Who cares? It's happened. We need to change. The high street, if it's going to be a place that remains, it needs to be experiential. You need to go into a shop and have a really nice feeling. For instance, here in Gran Canaria, in where I am, by the beach, there's a beautiful designer shop. Now, I shop online much of the time, but this shop is so beautiful and the assistants are so fantastic and they're so expert that I love going in there. It's a pleasure. The high street needs to develop that kind of sensation where you go into a shop and you just want to be there, rather than wanting to shop online. It needs to be an experience, and it's not at this moment. I mean, look, hang on, just look, for instance, Primark and pound shops still exist, don't they? And they're successful. So price also is a commodity. Price also dictates. So price and experience need to dictate.
Something tells me you're not wearing Primark tonight, Norma. You're a very glamorous lady, very, very well tailored.
Bye.
This is from TK Maxx, but I do agree with you. Too many chains make it an experience. Let's bring Andrew and Sue into this if we can. And Sue, how do you think we could save the Great British High Street? Because I would humbly suggest most of my viewers love their high street. They don't want to see it go downhill.
No. I mean, I'm lucky. I've got a really nice high street in the town where I live. There's not a single empty shop there. They're all full. But I think the government needs to get VAT down. They need to get business rates down.
Yes.
They need to get rents down. They need to have a more level playing field with those online. Those of us who want to buy British as well. I don't like shopping online because I can't tell where the original or where the place that the thing is being made in. You don't know until you get it home, which then is too late unless you want to waste a fortune sending them all back. I think all these online shops ought to have to tell you where the goods originate from, so those of us who want to buy British can buy British. And I think they need to make sure that the way that these big businesses like Amazon pay a hell of a lot more tax and pay the staff better.
I completely agree with you. Andrew, I've always thought you get the high street you deserve. And given the fact that we don't use our high streets enough, all we get is chain stores, betting shops, charity shops and estate agents.
Well, yes. I mean, unfortunately, we've recently lost one of our independent coffee shops here, which is such a shame because of the cost of her actually having a coffee shop. But there's numerous people. But also, I do feel that we need to have people being actually employed in the retail sector. So when I first started working when I was 16, I worked in Sainsbury's on the till. You got to talk to people. Now, what's happened is people have got all these self-service machines. We need to get people kind of going out. So when I get my clothes, I should be able to try it on. And there should also, I agree with Sue, that there needs to be more tax on Amazon. The high street is being killed. We need to have, shops where, people are employed, employers have, get money from government. So we operate a scheme where people can train with us in our sector and they learn on the job. Bring back retail apprenticeship, get people doing something to renovate, get more people involved in the community. I mean, a local disability group that I belong to, they have got various events going on in the week for children. At the weekends, there are stuff going on for adults. People need to be connected. If we do everything online, people are going to lose social connectivity.
Okay. Amen to that. Listen, the clock's against us. Mike, I've only got a couple of seconds. Give me your prescription for the high street.
The demise of the high street is hand in hand with the war on the motorist, OK? There's a war on the motorist in this country. If you can't pull up outside a shop and go in and get your goods, put them in the boot and drive off, you're not going to use the high street. Too many bike lanes. Too many parking spaces closed down. The parking spaces that are there are now massively charged at £4 or £5 an hour. It's the war against the driver that is killing the high street.
Mike Parry dropping truth bombs throughout the People's Hour. Thank you, Mike. What a privilege always to have Mike Porky Parry with us, broadcasting Fleet Street and TV legend. Also, speaking of legends, Andrew, Sue, Norma, Fergus and Robin. I wish we had longer. Brilliant, brilliant contributions from one and all. Let's do it all again next week. My Big Opinion is coming up next, plus tomorrow's papers and my all-star panel. They're going to let a biological man play cricket with 12-year-old girls. We'll discuss that next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 9 o'clock on Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, an adult biologically male trans woman has been allowed to play cricket against 12-year-old girls by the ECB. I'm beginning to think the West deserves to fall. More on that crazy story shortly. In the big question, should we have the right to end our own lives? And in the news agenda with my panel, as Gary Glitter's son says he wants to meet his father, can you ever forgive a criminal parent? Later this hour, we'll be going live to Los Angeles, California to catch up with the queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Is it over for Harry and Meghan? Reaction later this hour. They've become a laughingstock. Lots to get through, including my big opinion next. But first, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The UK says it's ready to support countries which can provide fighter jets to Ukraine. The Prime Minister made the commitment after addressing the Munich Security Conference, where he urged world leaders to act now and double down on military support. Rishi Sunak said the West's response to Russia hasn't been strong enough, and to win the war, Ukraine needs more artillery, armoured vehicles and air defence.
What I've done is say to all allies that we stand ready to support them if they can provide fighter jets to Ukraine now. And for our part, we're also leading the world in training Ukrainian pilots on NATO standard aircraft. That's the right thing to do, because this is about giving Ukraine the means to defend themselves and win this war. That's about more air defence, it's about armoured vehicles, it's about long-range weapons. The UK is out in front in all of these things, and it's important that we continue to do so and lead, because we all want to see Ukraine succeed.
Rishi Sunak also said a deal with the European Union on fixing issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol is by no means done. He held talks with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on the sidelines of the summit. Described as a positive discussion, the leaders said intense work was still needed at official and ministerial levels, and they agreed to remain in close contact over the coming days. The US State Department says the country's Secretary of State has had a meeting with China's top diplomat. Antony Blinken met with Wang Yi in Munich, also on the sidelines of today's summit. Their meeting followed comments Wang Yi made towards the US earlier today, saying it's violating international norms with what he described as hysterical behaviour, as tensions have continued following Chinese spy balloons being flown over the United States and Canada. A State Department spokesperson says during their meeting, Blinken made clear such an occurrence must never happen again. The death toll nearly 2 weeks after the Turkey earthquake has climbed to more than 46,000. Former Premier League football player Christian Atsu is among the lives lost. His agent confirming his body was found under the rubble of his home in Turkey. Rescue efforts are continuing, and just this morning a child was among 3 people saved 296 hours after the first quake hit. Some breaking news in the last half an hour or so. Former US President Jimmy Carter is receiving hospice care at his home in Georgia. A statement from the Carter Center says the 98-year-old made the decision after a series of short hospital stays. In recent years, he suffered from several health issues, including a melanoma that spread to his liver and brain. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana Sanchez, who returns at 10. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, in just a moment, an adult biologically male trans woman has been allowed to play cricket against 12-year-old girls by the ECB. It's an extraordinary story. You couldn't make it up. Also, the NHS have been told not to assume anyone's gender when they go into hospital. I'm beginning to think the West deserves to fall. More on those 2 crazy stories in a couple of minutes. In the big question, should assisted dying be a human right? Plus, tomorrow's Sunday papers from 10:20 right through until 11 o'clock. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. Tonight in the company of the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. And in my take at 10, woke idiots are rewriting the classic works of Roald Dahl in a story that even he couldn't make up. They've basically rewritten Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to make it PC. Welcome to hell. In the news agenda, is it over for Harry and Meghan? And as Gary Glitter's son says he wants to meet his father, can you ever forgive a criminal parent? Reacting to those stories and many more are radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, journalist and editor Peter Lloyd, and a brand new voice, a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. Now I want to hear from you throughout the show, mark at gbnews.uk. You know that my favourite part of the show is when you get in touch. I love reading your emails out. Unedited, uncensored, it can get very, very spicy indeed, and that's just how I like it. This show has a golden rule. Do you know what that rule is? It's a very strict rule. The rule is that we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. Now, this is just not cricket. An adult biological male who identifies as female has been allowed by the ECB, the England and Wales Cricket Board, to play cricket against 12-year-old girls. This, according to an exclusive story in today's Telegraph. A fully grown biological male, I assume rocking the full meat and two veg, smashing girls on a cricket field. This is progress, is it? Notwithstanding the obvious safety concerns, how long will it be before a woman dies in a sporting endeavour against a biologically male opponent? It also begs the question, what's the point in these young girls sacrificing so much for their sport? Practising, missing out on social occasions, travelling, and of course competing in matches at the expense of friends and their studies. What's the point in all of that effort if they're going to be competing against somebody with the undoubted physical advantage of a male body and the supercharged muscle mass, strength and stamina that comes with puberty? Listen, I'd love to talk about something else rather than this trans stuff. We're all sick of it. In fact, I'd rather show you kitten videos like this one. Aren't they gorgeous? Such a lovely colour. Oh, little sharp claws, sharp teeth, big eyes. I'd love to show you kitten videos, but I can't. I'm not able, because this madness is no longer a culture war. It's no longer an issue affecting a tiny minority of the population. Our society is changing dramatically, and women are starting to look like an endangered species. So we've got to talk about it. If we get to the point where a strapping lad who feels female is allowed to play cricket against young girls, you have to realise that we've lost our minds. We've reached the point of no return. And by the way, in terms of the idea of a biological male playing cricket, do you know how strong and heavy and hard a cricket ball actually is? You don't want that hurtling towards your 12-year-old daughter. Speaking of which, our dear NHS has been instructing doctors and nurses not to assume anyone's gender. You heard me right. Surely that's the moment that humanity has jumped the shark. If somebody with a penis and testicles is involved in a road traffic accident, are paramedics, nurses and doctors not allowed to call the patient he, or to tailor both the medication and procedures to that gender? Because be clear, whether it's an operation or if medication is prescribed, medicine is different for men and women. With this refusal to assume a patient's gender, you have the bizarre scenario in which a woman could conceivably get a man's dose and get ill or die because medics were too afraid to assume the patient was a woman. Can you believe we're even having this conversation? Every day we witness another assault on women's hard-fought sex-based rights. Every day we see an assault on our language through compelled speech, forced to announce our bloody pronouns, which unwittingly makes you a signatory to bonkers gender ideology, which says a man is a woman and a woman is a man. Every day we see an assault on science and the basic facts of human biology, which is that men are men and women are women. Soon that sentence will get you cancelled, at which point you can carry all of us to the funny farm. A lot of people think this woke stuff, these so-called culture wars, are overplayed or exaggerated, that it isn't a problem. Well, a hurricane isn't a problem until it reaches your home. This drastic change to our country has all happened without a single vote being cast. The infiltration has been swift and undemocratic. Wokeism may have peaked, here's hoping. But so much of the damage is done, with a society now led by emotion, led by your feelings rather than by basic facts and reality. Part of me thinks the West deserves to fall by so readily yielding to this nonsense. And be clear, the rest of the world is laughing, especially the likes of China. They're not woke, let me assure you. This would all be funny if it wasn't so dangerous and if it wasn't so tragic. We're in trouble, folks, and we're going to have to call it out and talk about it, or it will only get worse. Now, back to those kitten videos. Producer Greg had a lot of fun looking at those kitten videos this afternoon. It makes a welcome change for the kind of video content he normally consumes. So what is your view, Mark at gbnews.uk? A grown male calling himself a woman playing cricket with 12-year-old girls. Is that acceptable? Let me know your thoughts on that. I've got a statement from the NHS who have told the show, whilst this is a government and NIHR report, the NHS is committed to improving access, experience and outcomes for LGBT plus communities, and this guide seeks to support healthcare professionals with doing that. Their argument is they want to make sure the NHS delivers premium healthcare for all and that every patient feels included and safe in a healthcare setting, irrespective of their gender or sexual orientation. I've also got a statement from the ECB in relation to the cricket story. Transgender participation, they say, is a complex area. In recreational cricket, the eligibility of players is based on their own self-identified gender with no medical requirements. However, in the light of guidance from UK Sports Council's Equality Group, we're currently reviewing the situation. We will continue to consult with Sport England and other independent experts and will communicate any changes once this work is complete. There you go. The NHS are trying to be inclusive, so are the ECB. Is that the right or wrong thing to do? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. Reacting to my big opinion, radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton. Journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd and best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. Kezia, I'll start with you. Biologically male athletes who identify as female, fully grown adults, playing cricket against 12-year-olds. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, I don't have any problem with people, trans people, people becoming different genders. No problem with it. But I do feel that there is an issue when it comes to competing with women in certain sports. We're not talking about snooker here or golf. For me, maybe they're a little bit more kind of level, but something where it's to do with speed or to do with strength, then men definitely have, people who are born men, I should say, have an unfair advantage.
OK. Peter, what's your view on this, Peter Lloyd, particularly given the fact that these 12-year-old girls just aren't even the same size physically as an adult male?
I mean, I'm sorry, Mark, but I think it's absolutely hilarious. I mean, I know that you're very aggravated by it, and I understand why, but you know what? Feminists for the last 50 years have been telling us that there are no differences between the genders, that gender is a social construct. There's no male brain, there's no female brain. It's all just social conditioning. And what is the result? Exactly what we've got now. So while I sympathise with these poor 12-year-olds having to play cricket with grown-ups, I think, well, it was always going to end this way, and a lot of feminists brought it upon themselves.
David Hamilton, let's pick up on that story from the NHS with doctors and nurses being told not to assume someone's gender. I would have thought that was quite important when you're in a hospital.
Yes, I would certainly think so, because otherwise you might remove the wrong organ. You certainly need to know the gender of the person that you're operating on. I remember my father years ago went into hospital, and he said, he gave his name, and then he said appendix, because I think he was worried that they might have cut something else off. So, yeah, I think it's you certainly need to know who you're dealing with.
Are you a cricket fan, David?
Am I a cricket fan? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a cricket fan. Yes, I love cricket. I like to go to Arundel, which is my local cricket ground, and it's a lovely place to go and watch cricket in the summer. So yes, I do like it. But I think I don't think it's a good thing to mix the genders in any kind of sport because you know, whatever we think about equality, physically, men are much stronger than women. So it would seem unfair to mix things up.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, but you know what? We need to get the message straight. What are the rules here? Either the genders are different and men are physically stronger than women and have an advantage in that field, or they're not. Seriously, gender critics, gender warriors, all out there on Twitter, you decide what the rules are and we'll follow them, but make your mind up.
What is, I mean, brilliant panel tonight with some strong views across the board. What is your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Do let me know. We'll get to your emails shortly. In the news agenda with my panel, as Gary Glitter's son says he wants to meet his father, can you ever forgive a criminal parent? We've got the Sunday papers at 10:20 right through until 11. But next in the big question, should assisted dying be a human right? See you shortly.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've received an unprecedented number of emails in relation to my big opinion. I've conflated 2 stories. The ECB letting a grown adult male who identifies as female play cricket with 12-year-old girls. Meanwhile, the NHS have been told not to assume someone's gender when they go into hospital. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Well, let's get your reaction on email. Pronouns. Dear Mark, says John, I'm a 62-year-old man, but I identify as a 22-year-old and a Norse god. I think I'm being falsely identified, so much so that I'm angry and at risk of forgetting my pronouns. What is a Norse god to do? John, beautifully put. How about this from Richard? Mark, it's all very depressing at best and sinister at worst. I can't work out what the grand woke plan is and how it has gathered so much power over common sense. It's unravelling our society and the people in it. I think it's a huge contributor to the rise in mental health and particularly male suicide. Richard, I don't disagree with you. How about this from Will? It seems having a penis or breasts isn't a dead giveaway anymore for the NHS. John, Mark, it has to stop. A man will always be a man, a woman, a woman. I worry when we hear about operations to add or remove sexual bits. Who is the sickest, the patient or the doctor, asks John. And last but not least on this one, in relation to cricket, did the man who identified as a woman wear a box? Nicely done. There you go. I love your emails. Always the best part of the show. Keep them coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for this. You'll get me in trouble one day. It is time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Now, tonight, TV chef Prue Leith and her son, Tory MP Danny Kruger, who's been on this show, are at loggerheads over whether the law should be changed in relation to euthanasia, also known as assisted dying, in England and Wales. Prue Leith would support a change in the law to allow it, but Kruger, her son, wants the practice to remain banned. Well, it's been a topic long debated in good faith by all sides. But that's tonight's big question. Should assisted dying be a human right? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Rabbi Jonathan Romain from Religious Alliance for Dignity in Dying and Head of Public Policy at Christian Concern, Tim Dieppe. If I could start with you, Rabbi Romain, welcome to GB News and Mark Dolan tonight. Why do you support assisted death?
Well, I didn't always, I have to tell you, and I sort of changed my mind as a congregational minister for two reasons. Firstly, because I spent an awful lot of time visiting people in hospitals, hospices, and utter admiration for all the work that people do to care for those who are dying. But I saw just too many people who were terminally ill and who were dying in pain, despite the best efforts of the nurses and despite the care of their family, and who just wanted to die. And time again, people would say to me, every night I pray that I won't wake up. And when I do in the morning, I'm just devastated. And I thought, well, if people are terminally ill, they're dying anyway, and they're in great pain, why should we force them to suffer on when there might be a suitable medical way out? Plus, and the other factor that changed my mind is the safeguards. Now, there are other countries in the world, and there were some of them in the Prue Leith programme, where they have sort of rather wide admission criteria. But in the situation being proposed for Britain is very strict, very tight. You have to be terminally ill. You have to be monitored by 2 independent doctors. You have to sign the document saying you're aware of what's going on. You have ultimate choice throughout the time, and you have to be offered alternatives such as palliative care. And it just seemed to me that the safeguards we're offering in Britain, as opposed to elsewhere, are really strong and reassured me that for those who want to have an assisted death, and by the way, a lot of people will carry on to their last breath, and great for them, and we should give them every support. But for those who really are suffering, and who just want to let go and say, thank you, God, I've had a great life, but I don't want to carry on in this dreadful pain, then why shouldn't we let them do so? It seems to me not just more humane, more religious. There's nothing sacred about suffering. There's nothing holy about agony. And if those people want to let go, then they should be allowed to do so.
Tim Dieppe, also great to have you on the show, Head of Public Policy at Christian Concern. As a man of faith yourself, why would God want people to suffer if they don't need to?
He doesn't want people to suffer. He doesn't like people suffering. But my position is that we shouldn't legalise assisted suicide because it's unnecessary, because we can actually provide good treatments and good care for people in palliative care. And my wife died last year with very excellent palliative care, and that's what everyone should have. And secondly, because it's dangerous, because it puts vulnerable people at risk. And because of that, every major disability organisation in the UK is opposed to a change in the law because they're concerned that perceptions against disabled people would only increase, and the sense of them being a burden, the sense of a duty to die would only increase in that kind of way, as well as changing fundamentally the relationship between doctors and patients. And finally, because it's wrong. In fact, it's contrary to all historical codes of ethics, Christian, Jewish, Islamic, Sikh, Buddhist, Hindu, and of course the Hippocratic Oath as well. And so I think it would be a very dangerous thing to do to legalise assisted suicide in this country, and I'm glad we don't have it legalised today.
Jonathan Romain, as a highly respected faith leader yourself, have you had pushback from others in this regard? Surely it's the will of God as to when people die, not a medic.
Well, there's certainly some people who oppose, and I accept that people have reasons against, but I think the reasons for are so much stronger. And by the way, when you say it's the will of God, that's not really a good argument, because if it was the will of God, if we saw someone with a heart attack, we wouldn't say, oh yes, let him die, it's the will of God. We would come to their aid. Or we do things such as give blood transplants. We even give people new limbs, all sorts of transplants. So we intervene. We actually don't accept the will of God, and we try and keep people alive out of care, out of compassion. And so for the same two reasons, care and compassion, as I say, only for those in assisted dying and who, by the way, are mentally competent, and therefore we know that that's what they want. And by the way, I would also say that although there are religious leaders against, there are many, many religious leaders in favour. So it's not really a religious issue. It's a matter of almost principle. Do you insist that your view trumps everybody else, or do you give people a choice? So, Tim, it may be that for you and for your wife, and I'm sorry to hear about that, assisted dying is not right. Okay, I accept that fully. But then you shouldn't stop other people having that ability if that's what they so choose. I think that sort of lacks compassion for those people who are suffering, and it's not a very Christian approach, to be honest, because if people want to let go, I think they should be allowed to do so in these strictly regulated circumstances.
Tim, I would like to share Jonathan's comments and condolences to you on the very, very sad loss of your wife last year. How would you respond to what Jonathan has just said?
Yes, I think we should have compassion and care for all people who are suffering and do the very best we can. But my concern is if we actually legalise that will actually change the relationship between doctors and patients so that people get less care. An experience, for example, related by Dr. Catherine Mannix, a palliative care consultant, who had a patient who had been in the Netherlands who recovered from a cancer operation and was in some pain and discomfort. And every day the doctors would come around, how are you today? And he would say, well, I'm not very well. I'm suffering. I'm in discomfort. I'm in pain. And doctors say, well, I don't think there's anything we can do, but we can offer you euthanasia. Every day they offered him euthanasia till finally he was able to come to a hospital in the UK under the NHS, under this doctor. And the doctors then, instead of saying we're offering euthanasia, found a way, like innovatively looked into it, found a way to relieve his discomfort and looked after him and made him well and good to live. And so the point is that it changes the way the doctors think about how they care for people. They think, oh, well, we can offer you euthanasia, rather than thinking about how we can actually look after this person and alleviate their care. And I think it's very, very concerning to legislate in order to enable this because of the slippery slope that it would do in terms of the damage to the relationship between doctors and patients and the way that vulnerable people would feel under pressure to end their lives.
Jonathan, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'd like to correct two things, if I may. Firstly, terms. It's really important to be accurate about terms. Euthanasia is when somebody else takes your life. A suicide is when you end your own life, but if you hadn't done that, say you're depressed at 40, you could have gone on living for another 30 years. Assisted dying is different from both euthanasia and a suicide, because assisted dying is when you actually take the medication yourself, and it is only when you are terminally ill. So you're not killing somebody, they are taking their own life shortly before they die anyway. And the other thing is about changing relationships. And I think the other thing that really persuaded me that this is the right course to go down is what's happened in Oregon. Now, Oregon was one of the first places to allow assisted dying. It has a very, very similar protocols as we're proposing in Britain, and it did it 25 years ago. In other words, we have got the sort of the hindsight of a quarter of a century, and they haven't changed anything. It's not a slippery slope. A lot of people apply for permission, but they don't actually go through with it because because the life force is so strong. But it's an enormous sort of emotional safety net to know that if things get really, really horrible and absolutely pear-shaped, then they can get that prescription. And it's a great comfort to people who never take it but have that option.
Tim Dieppe, it is all about options, isn't it? I mean, what about people who are mindful of their own dignity? They just don't want to have a long, protracted and painful death. Perhaps there are medications that won't, remove all of the pain. What if there are issues around cognition? They can't remember or recognise members of their family. And what about those who don't want to be a burden on their family anymore? Surely they have a choice.
I think all of these things are very, very concerning, and I think that people should have absolutely the best care and the best looking after and the best attention to both medical, physical and mental health for every single person there. And I think it's very concerning. So a lot of people actually change their minds about this. Again, another case that Dr. Mannix relates is of a former head teacher suffering from motor neurone disease who felt, could see the prognosis, realised they weren't going to be able to do things and be as active and take care of themselves and couldn't face that. So I want to die. I was very upset about the law. I'd say, why won't you let me die? I want to be able to die. And then when experiencing the care and actually the love and actually all of the concern, all the medical concern that he had and the way he was looked after, he then said much later on, after, shortly before his death, I'm so glad that wasn't an option for me because I would have taken it and then I wouldn't have experienced these many last months. I wouldn't have had Christmas with my family and all that. Because so many people change their minds when they experience the actual care and love they have. Why do we say we should let you go? Why do we say, like Danny Kruger, what do we say to somebody who's wanting to jump off a bridge? We say, please don't do it, right? Why should we say it to someone else who's depressed and upset? Yes, we'll let you carry on. Go ahead, lose your life. We don't really care about your life. We don't really want to look after you. What kind of message does that send to people in society? I think it's a very concerning message that we're sending to people, that we don't really value people just because they're suffering, just because we're not very happy about life.
An important and complex...
Point about the man on the bridge. Let me pick up the point about the man on the bridge or the woman on the bridge. Usually that's someone who's reasonably able and fit and able to get to that position in the first place. And we know jolly well that they are gone through an emotional trauma or a financial disaster or whatever, and that they would live if actually they didn't jump. That's the whole difference. We're not killing off people who've got a long life and have a potentially happy life. We're talking about somebody who is dying anyway.
The difficulty is that actually the prognosis, the prognosis of doctors having notoriously unreliable in terms of the length of time that people have to live. And the example in Canada as well is very, very concerning. You've got people there like a Paralympic veteran who wanted a ramp in their house, and when they're phoning up the people to help said, oh, well, we could always give you euthanasia.
Okay.
These kind of cases are absolutely shocking and disturbing, and we don't want that to be happening.
We will have to leave it there. Apologies to both, but the clock's against us. My deep thanks to Rabbi Jonathan Romain from Religious Alliance for Dignity in Dying and Head of Public Policy at Christian Concern, Tim Dieppe, for a fascinating debate. Lots more to come, including the papers at 10:20. Kinsey Schofield live from America. But next, as Gary Glitter's son says he wants to meet his father, it begs the question, can you forgive a criminal parent? That's next.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel, radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd, and best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. Now, disgraced rock musician Gary Glitter was released from prison earlier this month for child sex crimes. He had a sentence of 16 years in jail and was released after serving just half that sentence. His 20-year-old son, who now lives in Spain, has opened up about wanting to meet his father. Speaking to the Daily Mail newspaper, he mentions that he talks to his father regularly and dreams to live with him someday. I understand that he's never actually met Gary Glitter, but it begs the question, can you ever forgive a criminal parent? David?
I actually knew Gary Glitter quite well. I knew him, I should say,
quiet.
Professionally.
Should we stop right there?
Professionally, rather than socially.
Right.
And what he did to his career was absolutely tragic because he was a huge star. He had enormous charisma and no radio station in this country will play his records anymore. So it was an absolutely tragic story. But he has served his time. Whether his time was long enough is debatable, but he served it. And I think, you know, now we should move on. And of course his son wants to see him. I mean, he's never seen your father. That's obviously the first thing that he would want to do. So, yeah, I think we move on.
Is it the obligation of a child to forgive the parent for their actions?
I think so. I mean, if he hasn't met his father, then he doesn't know whether he loves him or not, does he? But I think the boy has an aspiring career. He wants to sing as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
From what I gather.
Yeah.
So right. He would see his father...
And he is Gary Jr.
He's Gary Jr. So he would see his father as his inspiration, and he would want to have a clean slate.
Peter, forgive and forget when it's your old man?
Do you know, I didn't actually know that fact, David, but I am so not surprised that he's trying to launch a media career off the back of this. I just knew instinctively that that's what was happening. Yeah. But that being said, it's very easy for us to sit here and judge him for wanting to meet his father. These decisions are very complex and they're idiosyncratic. So it's understandable that he would want to meet his father because, let's be honest, fatherlessness, it's a big issue. It leaves a big hole in the soul. Yeah. It's the cause of a lot of societal problems. So it's completely understandable that he would want to have some kind of relationship with his father. He might not like what his father has done. I'm sure he doesn't. But I can understand why on a personal level he'd want to meet him. Why he'd want to broadcast it, apart from to launch a media career, I don't know.
It's a dilemma for any child, isn't it? Whether a parent is a criminal, perhaps, they've committed a murder or some grand fraud. The children of Bernard Madoff, who stole billions from many Americans, including charitable organisations. It's difficult when a parent has committed a crime. Should you forgive, Kezia?
I don't believe that children are obliged to forgive their parents. I believe that parents are always obliged to forgive their children, though. I believe that a parent's love for their child should be totally unconditional, but a child's love should always be conditional, I believe. A lot of people say, I love my mum, I love my dad because they tried their best, they're nice people. It's not enough. Your parents have to be accountable for everything. So, look, it's up to him if he wants to forgive his father, but should not be obliged.
I just wonder, because, you do a lot of work sort of coaching people, you coach men in the world of love and romance and dating and self-confidence and that kind of thing. I would have thought that one of the themes of being a happy person is about forgiveness and is about moving on. And I suppose that the children of someone like Gary Glitter, they need closure in relation to what their father did, don't they?
Yes, it's a personal choice if someone wants to forgive. But for me, I come from the school of thought that you shouldn't be obliged to forgive your parents. Your parents had you, and
but isn't it better for your mental health if you do? So you can move on.
So you're not so bitter. And yes, it is better to forgive. Yes, ultimately, yes. But again, it shouldn't be obliged.
I mean, if Gary Glitter was, God forbid, if he was your relative, how would you handle it? Would you cut them out of your life? Or would you try to integrate once they've served their time?
Personally, I think parents, they have to do the best job possible. And if they haven't, they failed. And I wouldn't forgive.
I suppose there's something uniquely egregious about this crime, which is child abuse. Peter, it's not perhaps the same as, a crime of the heart.
Right.
Jealous rage.
Right.
The main theme of the song Delilah. In a fit of rage, you murder out of jealousy. This is paedophilia. It's a big no-no.
Yeah, it doesn't get much more depraved than that.
Yeah.
But we're assuming that he does already forgive his father. I mean, chances are he's wanting to meet him to try and work out whether he can forgive his father.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there is an element of self-healing in that, of self-preservation. He wants to get to know the man behind the headlines, to maybe find some kind of peace with this horrendous story. I mean, let's not forget that it's not his fault who his father is and what crimes his father has committed.
Indeed so. I mean, look, this is a lot of responses coming in on email. Stuart has said whether you forgive a parent or not depends on the crime. A sexual crime, no. Robbed a bank, nobody hurt, yes. Colin, forgiveness is a moral imperative, particularly in your family. However, Bob, I think some crimes can't be forgiven ever. Would you include Glitter's crimes in that, David?
I think this is just about the worst crime that could possibly be perpetrated. We just have to hope, I think, that he's a reformed character. If he's coming out now, he apparently wants to go abroad again. I think, he needs to be watched very, very carefully. But I don't know whether people like him ever become reformed. He was a tragic victim of his own proclivities.
Yeah. Did you notice anything unusual about Gary Glitter? Did you feel like, he seemed a wrong 'un to you?
No, it's very funny, actually, because one of the things that I was doing was I was doing the announcing at Reading Speedway. And I used to take a celebrity every week, and one week I took Gary Glitter, and he said he would drive around the track in his Rolls-Royce and wave at the crowd. And he did that. It was about 1973, which was his biggest year. And he had, I'm the leader of the gang, which, of course, was a motorbike song. And the crowd booed him. And at that time, nothing had come out about Gary Glitter. I was told the reason was because the team lost for the first time that season, and they blamed him. But later on, I thought to myself, I wonder if they knew something that I didn't know.
Indeed. My goodness gracious. That's quite something to reflect on, isn't it? Well, there you go. We'll get to more of your thoughts on that shortly. We've asked you on Twitter if you could ever forgive a criminal parent. 51.8% said yes, 48.2% said no. A very marginal majority in terms of forgiveness. Coming up in my take at 10 in just a moment, woke idiots are rewriting the classic works of Roald Dahl in a story that even he couldn't make up. You won't believe this story. That's my take at 10. Plus, is it over for Harry and Meghan? The Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, is next. See you shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We were talking about assisted dying earlier in the big question. Bridget has written me a very moving email. Thank you, Bridget. Bridget said, Mark, I don't agree with assisted dying. My late partner had brain cancer, no pain. Nurses put a driver feeding morphine into him. He wasn't asked if he wanted any. And as his partner and carer, they didn't tell me what they were doing. In the end, Bridget lost her partner and she puts it down to the approach of medics. My heart goes out to you for what you've been through, Bridget, and I'm really, really sorry for your loss. Let's have a look at a few more responses on Gary Glitter. Can you ever forgive a parent that has broken the law or been a criminal? How about this from Aaron? Every man falls short of the glory of God, but no one is worthy. Stop pointing the finger at others. Pay for your crimes according to judgment. There you go, powerful words. How about this from Richard on euthanasia? I cared for my mother for 10 years after she had a major stroke that left her speechless and semi-paralysed. My brothers wanted her to die when she had her stroke. The pressure on the old by some relatives not to be a burden is enormous. The rabbi speaks about the terminally ill taking their own lives. Most terminally ill people are the worst case and are incapable of suicide. Further, are we to let a terminally ill child take their own lives? Richard, thank you for your considered email. I'll get to more of your emails shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
I have to admit, I am a subscriber to the podcast. I am loving your content, sir.
Well, listen, I'm very honoured. Thank you for the plug. I have launched a brand new self-improvement podcast called The Mark Dolan Way. Spread the word. Thank you for that, Kinsey. Checks in the post. Very sad news. Former US President Jimmy Carter will receive hospice care and spend his remaining time at home with his family.
That's right, Mark. This is a man that survived skin cancer in 2015, a terrible, terrible fall in 2019. He is the oldest living former president that we currently have. That's like 98 years old. He was our 39th U.S. president. And this is sad news. And, you know, I think that a lot of people will be disappointed to hear it. But 98 years old, what a life and legacy he's left. And, you know, God be with him and his family at this time.
Indeed. Has history judged him well? Is he considered to have been a good president? I remember at the time him being the subject of the butt of many jokes. Many people thought he was a bit of a flaky or lightweight president at the time.
You know, I do think that we're always kind of kinder towards the end of their life. I was reading up on him. Family from Georgia, was the first president to be born in a hospital. When his father passed away, him and his wife moved home and they saved the farm. He was a deacon at a church. He taught Sunday school. So, you know, when I read things like that, how can I not admire the man in his life? But you're right. He was the butt of some jokes for quite some time. But I think as he's gotten older, we've grown to maybe perhaps respect him a little bit more. I think we should respect our elders, Mark.
Most certainly. And as is tradition, he remains President Jimmy Carter until his last days. And we wish him and his family well. Let's have a look at this very funny clip from the animated comedy series South Park. Take a look.
It's been several months now since our beloved Queen has died. All Canadians are finding it hard to go on. All Canadians, that is, except for our first guest, the Prince and his wife. We want privacy! We want privacy! Thanks for having us on the show. It's so awesome to be here. It's great.
Blimey, now this couple are a laughingstock. Tell me more.
I mean, I honestly wish you had the clip where they are outside across the street. They've moved across the street from Kyle, and they're outside shooting fireworks off. And Kyle actually calls the police, and he's like, there are people across the street shooting fireworks off. It's 10:30 at night. I'm working on my brand. And the cops are like, is it the Prince and Princess of Canada? And they're still marching with their sign saying they want privacy. And then, look at me. Oh, and down with the monarchy. We want our privacy is one of the chants that they said. So, Mark, this is kind of breaking news. Fox News is reporting that Harry and Meghan are looking at litigation, that they have people that are combing through the South Park episode to see if they can get South Park or Comedy Central into any sort of trouble. That's what dropped on Fox News a few hours ago. So, I mean, typical Harry and Meghan to be so worked up, but the Comedy Central doesn't use their names at all. In fact, they're the Prince and Princess of Canada. Obviously, they're alluding to the couple when they call Meghan a sorority girl and an influencer and a victim. But another fun, story over here since the release of that episode is that Prince William likely got a kick out of it, which we can totally relate to.
We got a kick out of it too. Good news for America, because it's been a challenging time, hasn't it? We had the messy withdrawal from Afghanistan, a confused president, an economy in crisis, but Prince Andrew's on his way to the USA.
Right. Like, let's just, when it rains, it pours, Mark Dolan. When it rains, it pours. There's a story circulating this weekend that Prince Andrew is keeping a keen eye on Harry and Meghan. Their success overseas, and how he might spend life abroad. Could he come over to America, work with charities, become a businessman? So this is something that is not necessarily surprising, because in recent weeks we've heard Eugenie has been looking to come over. Meghan was sending her links to homes in the Montecito area. So could the York family relocate to America the same way Fergie did so many years ago? She came over here and was selling blenders, Mark. Do you remember that? Potentially it could happen.
Would Americans welcome Andrew?
Can I say hell to the no? Is that appropriate for late night television?
It's all yours. We'll take that.
I don't think we'd be thrilled to have him.
Speaking of hell to the no, Tiger Woods, one of the best known sports stars in the world, a very decorated golfer. What's he been up to?
Isn't he? Oh, I love Tiger Woods. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I just wanted to put it out there. He was at a PGA golf tournament event, it was just a PGA event on Friday playing golf. He hit his ball further than his friend Justin Thomas, who's also a professional player. And as a joke, Tiger handed him a tampon. This is a joke that's gone on forever in golf. You swing like a girl. Oh, did you drop your tampon if you didn't hit something very far? The internet has had a complete meltdown over this, Mark. Tiger had to apologize. This makes me so angry because I think this is hilarious. I get the joke. I'm not personally offended by it, but these women's groups are coming out, tearing into him. All of these people are trying to cancel him. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Whilst we're plugging podcasts, let me alert you to the To Die For Daily podcast, which stars Kinsey Schofield. It's the name of her brilliant royal website as well. And Kinsey, we'll see you in a week's time.
Thank you, sir. Love you.
Love you loads. The amazing Kinsey Schofield. In my take at 10 in just a moment, woke idiots are rewriting the classic works of Roald Dahl in a story that even he couldn't make up. I'll be dealing with that in just 5 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, woke idiots are rewriting the classic works of Roald Dahl in a story that even he couldn't make up. It's unbelievable. Just wait till you hear about that. We've also got tomorrow's Sunday papers at 10:20 right through until 11. We'll be joined by the brilliant Paul Connew, former Sunday Mirror editor. Also, we've got a busy hour in terms of your emails, my take at 10 and my all-star panel. Lots to get through, but first the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, good evening. Thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The UK says it's ready to support countries which can provide fighter jets to Ukraine. The Prime Minister made the commitment after addressing the Munich Security Conference, where he urged world leaders to act now and double down on military support. Rishi Sunak said the West's response to Russia hasn't been strong enough, and to win the war, Ukraine needs more artillery, armoured vehicles and air defence.
What I've done is say to all allies that we stand ready to support them if they can provide fighter jets to Ukraine now. And for our part, we're also leading the world in training Ukrainian pilots on NATO standard aircraft. That's the right thing to do, because this is about giving Ukraine the means to defend themselves and win this war. That's about more air defence, it's about armoured vehicles, it's about long-range weapons. The UK is out in front in all of these things, and it's important that we continue to do so and lead, because we all want to see Ukraine succeed.
Rishi Sunak also said a deal with the European Union on fixing issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol is by no means done. He held talks with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on the sidelines of the summit. Described as a positive discussion, the leaders said intense work was still needed at official and ministerial levels, and they agreed to remain in close contact over the next few days. The US Secretary of State has had a meeting with China's top diplomat. Antony Blinken met with Wang Yi in Munich. It follows comments that Yi made towards the US earlier today, saying it's violating international norms with what he described as hysterical behaviour, as tensions have continued to rise following Chinese spy balloons being flown over the US and Canada. A State Department spokesperson says during their meeting, Blinken made clear such an occurrence must never happen again. A woman in her 70s has died after she was attacked in a park in Exeter. A murder investigation has been launched and police are searching for a man who could be armed and dangerous. Officers were called to Ludwell Valley Park around 4 o'clock this afternoon following reports a woman had been seriously assaulted. Emergency services were called to the scene, but she died at the scene. The death toll, nearly 2 weeks after the Turkey earthquake, has climbed to more than 46,000. Former Premier League football player Christian Atsu is among the lives lost. His agent confirming his body was found under the rubble of his home. Rescue efforts are continuing, and this morning a child was among 3 people saved 296 hours after the first quake hit. And former US President Jimmy Carter is receiving hospice care at his home in Georgia. A statement from the Carter Center says the 98-year-old made the decision after a series of short hospital stays. In recent years, he suffered from several health issues, including a melanoma. that spread to his liver and brain. TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana Sanchez, who's back at 11. Always great to have her company, as it is yours. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. We've got tomorrow morning's papers. That's Sunday papers at 10:20 right through until 11. We'll be joined by the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Plus, we bring you full panel reaction. Right through until 11, we're joined by iconic radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, leading journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd, and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. A busy hour, but first, my take at 10. Roald Dahl is the author of countless brilliant books read by generations of children, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Matilda. But here's a story that even this literary genius couldn't make up. His iconic books, which have entertained millions of children around the world for decades, have received a woke makeover. The Telegraph's arts and entertainment editor, Anita Singh, reports that Roald Dahl's publisher, Puffin, has made hundreds of changes to the original text. The obese Augustus Gloop from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is no longer fat. That's right, he's had a diet. Mrs. Twit is no longer fearfully ugly. And the Oompa Loompas have gone gender neutral. Of course they have. The publishers, Puffin, are a good advert for taxidermy. Get stuffed. These people know no shame. That became clear to me when right-on theatre companies were rewriting Shakespeare to make it less problematic, even though Shakespeare is widely considered the greatest author the world has ever seen. The arrogance of these censorious thugs knows no bounds when they think that they can slap a trigger warning on George Orwell's dystopian book 1984, completely missing the irony there, or when they think they can cancel episodes of Fawlty Towers, claiming they're racist, even though the very message of those episodes was an anti-racist one. What gives this generation, or any generation, the right to get their filthy mitts on the great art of the past? Bruce Springsteen famously said the great thing about a song is it stays written. Except that's sadly no longer the case. Just last Christmas, we saw apparently offensive lyrics from the Fairy Tale of New York removed from radio versions of the song. Apparently, if we're now exposed to the word faggot, the offending word from that song, our heads will explode or something. And now the supposed custodians of Roald Dahl's back catalogue, which has spawned a litany of hit movies and live theatre shows, are happy to not only erase parts of his great work, which should surely remain untouched, but they're willing to rewrite it and change the meaning. So, for example, in the new woke version of Matilda, Matilda reads Jane Austen rather than Rudyard Kipling. Why? And a witch, originally described as a cashier in a supermarket, now works as a top scientist. Are we pushing girl power here? Did anyone check with Roald Dahl when they did these rewrites? An emphasis on mental health has led to the removal of the words crazy and mad, which Dahl used for comic effect. And, of course, the words black and white have been removed as well. Characters no longer turn white with fear, and the big friendly giant in the BFG cannot wear a black cloak. This is progress, is it? What was glorious about Roald Dahl's books is that they were violent, they were dark, rude and offensive. They were troubling, they were sinister, they were creepy. They were an outrage, which is why children have always devoured them with such joyful glee. It turns out children aren't woke. Only the pathetic so-called sensitivity readers who are employed by these publishers to look for offence everywhere. Well, here on Mark Dolan tonight, we're one step ahead of the censors with some new politically correct titles for some of Roald Dahl's greatest hits. So, for example, the big friendly giant could be replaced by the average-sized friendly person. Is that better? Has that spared your feelings? The witches could be replaced by the single independent women who are very emancipated, got their own lives. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Well, it's going to go vegan, isn't it? And sugar-free, I've got no doubt. And last but not least, James and the Giant Peach becomes James and the plus-sized Peach. All about body positivity. Can't be too careful. Harsh humour and violent, provocative language and murderous themes are things that kids can't get enough of. They love it. This shocking move is typical of the woke movement, which is willfully anti-art. These thought police will stop at nothing before every good song, every good book, every good TV show and every good film is edited, chopped, reshaped and adulterated to fit the partisan, uniform, bleak, joyless narrative of the progressive left. No one has a right not to be offended. And being offended is the very best thing about Roald Dahl's wonderful stories. Soon we will never laugh at another joke, we'll never dance to another song, we'll never be gripped by a powerful play or movie, and we will never read an interesting book. We will simply be force-fed a diet of politically correct, government-approved cultural diarrhea. To say that Roald Dahl is spinning in his grave is an understatement. He's currently doing an impersonation of the Large Hadron Collider. It's time to throw the book at these woke censors. Enough is enough. The end. What's your view, Mark at gbnews.uk? Is it time these books got an update? The publishers Puffin are quoted as saying, "These changes are designed so that the books can continue to be enjoyed by all today." They would argue that they're simply seeking to weed out and remove any offensive, sexist, ableist, transphobic, racist or misogynistic language. And they would argue they're seeking to make the world of Roald Dahl as inclusive a place as possible for readers. I don't agree, but what are your views? Mark at gbnews.uk reacting to that and tomorrow's Sunday papers. Iconic radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd, and best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. Peter Lloyd, they've rewritten Roald Dahl. Your reaction?
So depressing, but it's also so predictable. I mean, if you thought that trigger warnings on texts was bad 3 or 4 years ago, you were foolish if you thought it was going to end there. It was always going to slide into this Clowntown fiasco. The absolute arrogance of these so-called sensitivity readers, who are nowhere near as talented as the incredible Roald Dahl, touching this artist's work, it's staggering. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that wokeness is anti-art. Have you ever noticed that it never, ever creates anything like Roald Dahl did? It only ever destroys. Hopefully, someday soon, it will destroy itself.
Kezia Noble, all the publishers want to do is make everyone feel welcome in the world of Roald Dahl.
Yeah, but that wasn't Roald Dahl's agenda. His was to make children laugh and spook them out. And I've actually watched interviews with Roald Dahl, and he almost thinks like a child. He laughs at what children laugh at, and that's what made him very unique. And I'm so glad I've kept all my Roald Dahl books, which I now read to my child, who loves them. And I try and read other books from other authors, but, you know, they still go back to Roald Dahl, even though the books they weren't written for a particular generation. They were written for generations to come also. And even today, I went to a bookshop and I went to the children's section to find a book for my child. And all I could find, like, being pushed, as, you know, the people who work there, they recommend the books. It was just books that had an agenda. It was political, and it was about trans, and it was about my two mums, my two dads, which is nothing wrong with that. Let those books be there. But I read some of those books and I thought, well, these are actually quite rubbish. Like, I don't mind you promoting that, but at least write well and bring some joy to the children. Because they'll just get bored of it. Like, Mummy, stop reading that book now already.
Right, and the funny thing is that the sensitivity readers, the changes they've made, they are terrible. I don't know if you've read them all, but they are toe-curlingly bad. I mean, I saw them earlier on Twitter and I was locked in a full-body cringe for about 25 minutes. So seriously, why Puffin have employed these morons, I don't know, but they should not be touching sacred text.
A full-body cringe is the line of the night, let me tell you. David Hamilton, you're on the radio every day. What's the name of your channel?
Boom Radio. Thank you for allowing me to mention it.
Yeah, and you're on every day, a very, very popular show, and you play classic songs from the past. We shouldn't be touching any of those songs or removing problematic lyrics. We shouldn't be touching the great work of Shakespeare or Roald Dahl, for that matter.
Well, I hope Puffin know what they're doing. I think they're wasting their money, quite frankly. I mean, who is going to buy this? There's nothing, with everything, there's nothing like the original. And I'm so fed up with all this woke stuff. I don't know who's driving it, but I can't imagine anybody in their right mind actually going out and buying this drivel.
Indeed. I think that the family sold the rights to his work. That's right. The company was run by the Dahl family in 2020, but Netflix acquired the literary estate in 2021 for £500 million. That's the problem, isn't it, Peter? That the family no longer control his work, and it's in the hands of woke Americans at Netflix.
Yeah, unfortunately, the long march through the institutions is real, and Netflix are proof of that. As soon as they got their hands on these pieces of work, which, like we've all said, are classic and timeless and appeal to everybody, they've ruined them, because these people who run these companies become so corrupted by political correctness and the desire to appeal to mass audiences all the time, rather than staying loyal to the original product, that they lose all sight of their audience. And that's the real issue here, is it's almost a contempt for people who read books. That's where we're at.
Yes, indeed. We need to be protected. We're so vulnerable. We're so fragile. I think it's a crime to touch any work of art, especially when the creator is no longer with us. Your reaction, Mark at gbnews.uk. We've got the papers next. It's Sunday's papers, 10 minutes earlier than everyone else, right through until 11 with my panel. But joining us straight after the break, reacting to a couple of the front pages, is the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, top political biographer and political commentator, Paul Connew. He's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As that rather expensive graphic will tell you, it's time for tomorrow's papers, and it's the Sunday papers. I've got all of them at 10:30, but let's have a sneak preview, and let's start with The Independent. And The Independent on Sunday lead with the sick children left to suffer as wait for care on NHS soars. Hundreds of thousands of children are waiting for surgery. As figures show, the backlog has increased by almost 50% in 2 years. The NHS data for December lays bare the state of paediatric medicine, with NHS leaders and doctors warning adult care is being prioritised over children's. In December, 364,000 children were waiting for treatment, from neurosurgery to ear, nose and throat operations. A further 200,000 needed community services such as speech and language therapy. That figure up by 48% since April 2021. The Observer, Johnson threatens Sunak's bid to end deadlock over Brexit. Rishi Sunak was tonight on a collision course with Boris Johnson over his plans to overhaul Northern Ireland's post-Brexit arrangements amid a frantic diplomatic blitz to end the bitter dispute with the EU. Also in The Observer, food banks at breaking point as demand hits new high. Let's get reaction now from the political commentator, best-selling political author and former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Hi, Paul.
Good evening, Mark.
Not for the first time, Boris Johnson enters the political spotlight at a crucial time for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, when he's trying to resolve tensions around the Northern Ireland Protocol.
This was as predictable as night following day. I mean, Boris was bound to intervene. You know, I said this on another programme yesterday, but it's utterly predictable. But what's fascinating here, as we approach the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and of course, we have a situation where Rishi Sunak is on the brink. Anything could still go wrong, but of a deal to solve the Northern Ireland Protocol issue. And if the deal goes before Parliament, and it could come as early as Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, according to some sources, then he will get it through Parliament, because the opposition parties, Labour, the SNP, the Lib Dems, will support it. They've already made that pretty clear. But he will face a revolt from the ERG and others on the hard Brexit Tory right. So would it be a Pyrrhic victory? That's a big question. But in many ways, it'll accentuate the divisions in the Tory party, and the public don't like divided parties. So this could well be a passport to electoral defeat. And that begs the question, would that damage the Tory party beyond repair? I mean, the Tory party have a habit of actually being to come back from defeat, but this one could be a very messy one. And of course, Boris Johnson will, I'm sure, promote this, and so will his allies, as the betrayal of Brexit. But I've said this before, and you won't be surprised that Brexit isn't working. Whether you're a Remainer or a Leaver, Brexit isn't working the way it was sold or missold as. And Sunak, to his credit, is trying to forge a better relationship with the EU, which makes sense economically, but also makes sense against the backdrop of another anniversary coming up, of course, the Ukraine war, when the West and Europe need to be tied together closer against the threat from Putin than having arguments about the Brexit fallout. I mean, I'm not advocating a second referendum again now, but although I supported one in the past, but I think we do have to forge closer economic ties, and I think that, but many will, in the Tory party, on the right of the Tory party anyway, will resent that, and so it could be a very interesting and stormy week. And whether Rishi Sunak's authority, he'll win a vote, as I said, because of the opposition party support and a fair chunk of the Tory parliamentary party, but there could be 50 or so Tory MPs who actually strongly oppose any deal along the lines that's being suggested, and I think is not a done deal yet, but it's pretty close to being a done deal.
I mean, I beg to differ. I think it's too soon to judge Brexit. I think it needs time. But Paul, interesting to get your thoughts very briefly, just a few seconds if you can, because I've got to get to a break. But you've written a best-selling book about Boris Johnson. Why has he stepped in? I mean, he's not helping the Prime Minister. Is he being a shit disturber?
Boris and his allies have never given up on the idea that there is no way back to number 10 for Boris, even before the next general election. I mean, I think that is fantasy, but there are those who don't, who believe that if Rishi Sunak suffers a very bloody nose at the May local elections, that Boris could come back. I mean, there is an effort at the moment, whether it succeeds or not, to change the rules of the Tory party to allow a second vote and on the leadership, and that could happen. I mean, Boris has never given up on. Churchill's his hero, and Churchill was the ultimate political comeback kid, and Boris Johnson sees himself in the same mould. Boris has never, for all the money he's making from speeches and advances on his books, he is still hankering and sees his destiny in number 10 and believes that he was wrongly kicked out.
Absolutely. Paul, he's making more money than you these days, and that's going some. Top political commentator. More money than you,
Mark, I suspect, but...
in my dreams. Paul, great to have you back on the show. We've known each other a long time in this business. Always a privilege to have you on the programme. Best-selling author, media commentator and former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew. Do check out his book on Boris Johnson. It's quite the read. Lots more to come. We've got tomorrow's Sunday papers next with full panel reaction.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
She's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
It is exactly 10:30, so it's time for a full roundup of tomorrow's Sunday papers, hot off the press, and we start with the Sunday Telegraph. And they lead with the following: Johnson's warning to Sunak on Northern Ireland deal. Former PM says abandoning the protocol bill, which basically aims to scrap it, would be a great mistake. Also, refugee charities as bad as smugglers. Calais refugee charities are just as bad as people smugglers, the new Conservative Party deputy chairman has claimed. Lee Anderson, who was promoted in Rishi Sunak's cabinet reshuffle, the French coast act as enablers for migrants making the perilous journey across the Channel in small boats. PM faces tax rebellion. Rishi Sunak, in another political headache, is facing a major budget rebellion over his corporation tax hike. This according to an exclusive from the Sunday Telegraph's Camilla Turner. Senior Tory backbenchers, business chiefs and economists have urged the PM to abandon his flagship policy to raise the tax from 19 to 25%. A letter to Sunak, signed by the leaders of several influential groups of Tory MPs, urges him to follow a growth agenda and adopt a fresh approach to encourage investment. OK, next up, we shall go to the Express. Let's have a look at the Sunday Express now. Forces too broken to defend the UK. Britain's armed forces need a £3 billion annual boost to keep their status as Europe's leading military power. This according to General Sir Richard Barrons. OK, next up, we've got the Mail on Sunday. Embattled Duke of York confides to friends that he may have to move if Charles slashes his annual grant. Time to produce the small violins. Andrew fears he will lose £30 million home. Prince Andrew fears the King is trying to force to £30 million Windsor home by slashing his annual grant. A furious Duke of York is telling friends that without hundreds of thousands of pounds a year from his older brother, he will be unable to maintain Royal Lodge and will have to move out by September. It's understood the sprawling 30-room property requires extensive work, but Andrews stopped receiving public money when he stepped down from royal duties in 2019, following accusations of sexual assault, which he continues to deny. OK, next up, let's go to the Independent. The sick children left to suffer as wait for care on the NHS soars. More than 350,000 children are in need of urgent operations. One girl aged 6 has had brain surgery cancelled as a result of staff shortages. Doctor warn adults are being prioritised over youngsters. At the moment, 364,000 kids waiting for treatment. Absolute scandal. Next up, let's have a look at The Observer. Johnson threatens Sunak's bid to end deadlock over Brexit. Boris Johnson there echoing that story in the Sunday Telegraph, making life harder for the Prime Minister by suggesting that the Northern Ireland Protocol has got to go. It cannot be tweaked. And last but not least for now, the Daily Star Sunday. Britain's bosses can't get job done because of extraterrestrials. Yes, can't get to work today, Chief, as I've been abducted by aliens again. Those pesky aliens have a lot to answer for. Now ET is abducting staff and making them miss work. It's hitting productivity, say HR bosses who report a sudden rise in extraterrestrial excuses. And those are your front pages. Let's get full panel reaction now from David Hamilton, Peter Lloyd and Kezia Noble. Let's have a look at where we should start. Kezia, can I ask you about this story in The Independent? The sick children left to suffer as wait for care on NHS soars.
It makes me mad as hell, and I think it should be making everybody mad as hell. Children have sacrificed so much over the last 3 years for a virus which does not hurt them at all. And to hear that adults are being prioritised still over children, it's sickening.
Yeah.
You know,
these are the same children that we locked up during the pandemic.
Vile.
Lockdowns, even though they didn't face a clear danger from COVID, kept out of school, masked in school when they went back, and now they're not getting medical treatment.
I don't know when this happened. I don't know at what point in history did we flip and say children now are not important. I remember during the COVID times that they were putting people into, they were like closing the children's wards for COVID patients, which I just thought was insane. And just to hear this news just saddens me, and it should make everybody angry, whether they have children or not. It's just an instinct that children are more important.
Indeed. Peter, it's a very sobering story, this one, and just an example of what a bad state the NHS is in.
Right. And what makes it even worse is that this story comes just a week or two after it was revealed that the NHS is paying something like 3,000 middle managers six-figure salaries.
Right.
So let me just get this straight for a second. So the NHS, which is publicly funded, is spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds on middle management. Yet sick children can't get operations that they urgently need. You said earlier that the West deserves to fall, so does the NHS. I'm so sick of it being considered a sacred cow. No one's allowed to discuss it. No one's allowed to criticise it. The whole thing is a creaking, fat albatross.
Where do you begin to sort that out? Who and how?
Easy, you know what?
You sort it out.
3 really quick suggestions. Slash 70% of the middle management. You'll save a fortune. Reprioritise that money back into the NHS, give it immediately to the children who need urgent care. Hire doctors and surgeons who can perform those operations. Second, adopt a semi-private, semi-public model like we have on continental Europe. That would work wonders. That would also alleviate a lot of the backlog. And thirdly, it's a no-brainer. Don't let people who don't pay into the system use the NHS. It's really not difficult.
Which isn't possible when you go abroad. Other countries are not mugs like us.
Right, I've just come back from New York. You think I would be allowed to go into a hospital and get free treatment and then leave the country? No way. And quite right. And yet we allow people to come into this country. Planes with women who are 9 months pregnant coming into the country to give birth. And then they leave again, or people bringing over their relatives for hip operations.
Why are we always such a soft touch about everything? We really are, aren't we? You know, it's really time for somebody to stand up and do something about it.
But, you know,
who will?
There is 3 decent suggestions for how the NHS can improve, and I'm not asking for a 6-figure salary.
No, well, listen, I'd hire you straight away, honestly. I mean, quite clearly. Peter Lloyd for Health Secretary. Let's have a look at defence now. The Sunday Express, David, forces too broken to defend the UK. The MOD need £3 billion. Every department wants money. Why do the MOD merit it, do you think?
Well, you know, we need to protect ourselves. I mean, at the moment, we're sending an awful lot of material and tanks and things to Ukraine, which is a very laudable thing to do. But in a way, you know, it's leaving almost nothing. We're almost unprotected here. And General Sir Richard Barras reckons that the amount that is needed is £3 billion. So here again, we have another department asking for more money. You know, where does the money come from? But I think not much could be more important than defence.
I completely agree. Bad news for Prince Andrew, Peter. He fears he will lose his £30 million home if the King gets tough on how much he receives every year.
I know, I'm sorry, it's actually very difficult for me to talk about this.
Yeah, you're willing up.
Sorry,
upsetting.
It's very, very difficult for me to talk about this because he's had such a hard life and it's so difficult for him to live in that, you know, £30 million house that he doesn't have to pay for. I mean, does anybody really care if he gets evicted from this home? No.
How is he going to get by if he hasn't got his 30-room property?
Get a job.
You know, I mean, no, but everybody needs 30. What do you actually do with 30 rooms?
Correct.
Airbnb.
Well, Prince Andrew's
Airbnb.
He can rent them out to migrants crossing over.
Right, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Perhaps he could shack up with some of the people that enter the country illegally. An interesting political story here. Boris is back, folks. This in The Observer. Boris Johnson threatens Sunak's bid to end deadlock over Brexit. Now, Kazir, I know you're not particularly versed on the issues around the Northern Ireland Protocol. But what about the personalities involved? Boris Johnson, right, ex-Prime Minister, should he be intervening? Because clearly it's a headache for the guy at number 10, the guy that replaced him.
I'm at the point now where I think they already know what the outcome is. I think this is all theatre. I never had faith in Boris Johnson to begin with. Everyone thought he was he's this great personality and so on. The person that's running this country right now is not even Rishi Sunak. It's Jeremy Hunt. I feel like that's the person who is running the country, and he is an evil force. I really believe that. I feel that all of this is just theatre.
Now, he, of course, Jeremy Hunt, not here to defend himself. He would argue that he's steadied the country, the economy. You know, the financial markets are confident in Britain again. The cost of government borrowing's gone down. Yeah. Inflation is heading down. Interest rates have stabilised. You know, many would argue Hunt's done a good job. Why do you frame him in such a apocalyptic language?
The markets reacted to Liz Truss, which they do whenever there's change. They always react. She didn't explain, she didn't lay out her plans clearly enough. And so they reacted, and they would have calmed down eventually, maybe a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. What he's done is he's raised corporation tax, which is going to have significant effects. I already know people who are moving to low-tax countries, Ireland, Dubai. We're losing some of our best people, and there's going to be a drain on the tax because the corporation tax, so many people are moving out. So they're just going to keep putting up the tax on other people. It's disastrous. This is going to be an uncompetitive country. People are just not going to want to do business here. What we seem to be getting coming into this country now are migrants who are not contributing. You know, some of them are, but so many aren't. Like, what on earth is going on? This country's like literally losing the plot. I don't know if they're even losing the plot. They're spiralling, or this is a plan. This is what I'm starting to feel.
Globalisation.
Something's going...
I mean, we've got big problems. 2.5 million working-age adults are unable to work due to mental or physical ill health issues. The country feels like it's grinding to a halt. What about that corporation tax? I mean, do you think that actually the Chancellor and the Prime Minister will give in to backbenchers and scrap this planned tax? What, you don't think it's going to happen?
No, they won't. They're going to go ahead with this corporation tax. They're going to go ahead with it, and then it's going to rise even, I believe.
What do you think, Peter? I mean, I guess it would be a sign of weakness from the Prime Minister and the Treasury if they back down on this.
I agree with you, actually, especially after what happened with Liz Truss when she U-turned with her financial plans. It was disastrous. It was political suicide, and I think Rishi is very, very aware of that fact. And now, because Boris is intervening, he's going to stick to his guns. He's going to say, nope, this is my gig now. I'm in control.
Do you think that Boris has the potential to make a comeback?
Yeah, this is totally him laying the foundations for his comeback. I mean, it's so Churchillian. It's almost a bit Machiavellian, actually, but maybe it's a bit of both. But he is so waiting in the shadows just for the right opportunity, and then he's going to pounce.
How worrying.
I mean...
This is a man who used to scruff up his hair before he went on for interviews because he wanted people to think he was a bit of a wally. He's not. He's very devious and calculated.
Well, but that's politics, isn't it? That is politics.
Yeah, but he's been absolutely rubbish for this country.
Well,
I think he's determined, isn't he, to be a thorn in the side of the Prime Minister. Yeah. And there's nothing worse, really, is there, than ex-Prime Ministers. They all like to have their say. They've had their day. They should all go away.
Especially Tony Blair.
Indeed. I mean, some would argue Rishi Sunak was a thorn in the side of Boris Johnson. You'd still rather have Liz Truss at number 10?
I think she would have been good. I think if everyone would just calm down and stop panicking, going, oh, my God, mortgage rates, interest rates, and just let the market settle. We cannot be dictated to by the markets. We can't be. We can't. We have to see... Look, there has to be longevity. We have to see the long game, the long plan. And that's what she had. So we should have stuck through it. This is the biggest mistake, is raising corporation tax. So many people are going to leave. So many people just say, you know what, I can't do it. I can't run a business here.
Do you know who I would like to see in number 10? You.
Well, listen, you'll be my deputy all day long. Health Secretary, OK? Obviously, I think probably Chancellor, because you're going to be for low taxes. Yeah. And then, David, you're going to be my spokesman with that rather velvety voice of yours.
I was going to say they've already got a comedian as a Prime Minister in Ukraine, so there's always a chance for you.
There's always hope. There is always hope. Never say never. Listen, brilliant panel, I think you'll agree. They'll be back, and they will react to tomorrow's Sunday Times, which is next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Big reaction on email to our conversation in relation to the papers. Prince Andrew worried he's going to lose his £30 million house. This from Elizabeth. The Duke of York does not receive public money. None of the royal family do. The money comes from the royal estates, which the Treasury snaffles most of under an agreement made by George III. The public make a hefty profit out of the royal family. The king would do well, says Elizabeth, to show the same generosity to his brother that he does to his children. Cutting royal dukes off from the sovereign grant is a very false economy, as we saw with the Duke of York and Prince Michael. Predators soon step in to fill the gap. Elizabeth, thank you for that beautifully written and considered email. Let's now get to our next front page. And this is the Sunday Times. And here's what they're leading with. TV station shut as Iran's killers target UK staff. Dissident channel relocates after Met advice. Also, Tavistock children still referred for puberty blockers. Boris Johnson, a nuisance on Brexit deal. And Laura Hackett returning to the topic of my take at 10. Charlie and the Censorship Factory responding there to the news that Puffin, who publish Roald Dahl's great works of fiction, have been making them woke and giving them a rewrite. If you missed my take at 10, you can find it at GB News on Twitter, courtesy of our excellent digital manager page. You can also see my big opinion on there as well, at GB News on Twitter, reacting to the big stories of the day. Our radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, journalist and broadcaster Peter Lloyd, and best-selling author and dating expert Kezia Noble. Now, the detective in charge of the Nicola Bulley case, Rebecca Smith, has been criticised for her choice of dress whilst at a press conference. Some thought it might have been an inappropriate choice. Others have defended the outfit. She was wearing high heels. I guess the dress goes to her knee, and then she's got exposed arms. So are comments about her appearance sexist? Would people comment on men's choice of clothing, or is it fair criticism at such a grave event, which is a press conference about a missing mother of two? Kezia, what do you think about this?
I would be a huge hypocrite if I was to make a comment about whether a woman is appropriately dressed or not. I have no issue with how she's dressed. We were talking about this earlier. She's probably single and she's probably putting it out there. So this is her moment. Guys can have a good look.
I mean, to be fair, you are kind of putting it out there tonight, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't... Like I said, I cannot be...
and more power to you.
I can't be a hypocrite and say, oh, she should have dressed more modestly, because I don't dress modestly.
Well, actually, Peter, I've got you down as the eye candy tonight, I've got to say. Kezia, very beautiful. Of course, David, a distinguished style. But we think you're the hottie tonight.
Well, I think you need to get your glasses prescription updated, but thank you very much. Now, this story is quite interesting, actually, because Amanda Platell at the Mail, who's, of course, a GB News guest.
Correct. Regular on Dan Wootton's show?
Yeah, I mean, she's great. I used to work with her at the Mail, and she's, you know, she's a very good writer, and she's expresses herself very clearly. She's been really harassed online for expressing an opinion about this, which is so ironic, because all the people who are harassing her are the type of people who say, let women speak, hear women, give women an opinion. OK, well, here is a woman voicing an opinion, and you're attacking her for it. Look, this police officer, she did look nice, but it was borderline inappropriate. A woman is missing. She's still missing. Nobody has any updates. Why is she dressing?
She wasn't wearing a bikini.
No, she wasn't. That's why I said it was.
I mean, it's
it was
sleeveless
borderline.
dress. I mean, there's a lot of arm going on. It's very elegant, isn't it? It's very
no cleavage showing. She has a bit of leg. Come on.
I thought she looked very attractive, and she looked really more like a model than a.
She did look very nice.
But the thing is this: she was next to a policeman in uniform. She didn't have to wear uniform because she is a detective. And so it is not upon her to wear...
Look, I just wonder, does she not look like she's going to a nightclub?
Yeah,
let me quote Amanda Platell. Detective Superintendent Rebecca Smith at a press conference. Skin-tight navy dress, stilettos, poker-straightened hair. Whatever happened to a cop uniform? Or is she auditioning for Love Island for midlifers? Show some respect for a missing mother.
Right. You should have just said, wear your uniform. Then it's settled.
But isn't there anything... I mean, isn't there an equivalent? Isn't there... an outfit which is sober. I think she looks good. She's a very accomplished officer of the law, and also she's an attractive woman. But that's not a sober outfit, Kezia, is it? It's not sober.
Not when a missing woman is involved.
I would actually be much more concerned about what they said about Nicola when they said that she had alcohol problems and also that, what was the other?
Menopause.
Menopause. And I think, you know, that was very, very inconsiderate to her family and to her.
Correct.
If she's still with us, which of course we hope that she is. And I would be much more concerned about that than what the detective was wearing.
I think that's a really fair point. Voice of wisdom there, David Hamilton. Now, a New York subway are banning dogs on the train unless the dog can fit in the owner's bag. So, should we follow in New York's footsteps and ban pets on public transport? Any pet owners here? Oh, yes. Also, David, apparently Australia don't allow pets on public transport either, courtesy of my producer, Rebecca.
You know all about my dog because I've mentioned her before, my Cocker Spaniel.
Yes.
And I like to take her everywhere with me, and to take her on a bus or a train is a sheer joy. She's not going to upset anybody. So without doubt, yes, as far as I'm concerned, take your pets with you wherever you can. Certainly, public transport, why not?
Yeah.
Really? Is it not stressful for them?
No. I have a dog and he gets really upset when he doesn't come out.
Yeah.
I've got gerbils too, but I might not bring them out to a restaurant. But I love it. Immediately when I see a dog in a restaurant or a pub or on a bus, I go up to it, and children love it. I mean, I'd rather see more dogs on a bus than humans. They're more charming.
But do punters want to sit next to a drowling, dribbling sausage dog, Peter?
Not necessarily. Although I have to say, when it comes to New York, dogs and animals on the subway is the least of their issues.
Yes.
I mean, I've literally just come back from New York. I was there for 2 weeks. When I'm there, I always ride the subway. I always even use the buses. They're great. They're a really zippy way to get around. Yeah. But my goodness, they are, like, incredible for what you see on there. You have people masturbating, urinating, rats the size of cats, homeless people living on there 24/7. No, London's tube is so much
I've been on both.
Maybe what you should do is have animals on there and no people.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, seriously, New York's transit system, don't worry about the animals, get the people off, and then it'll be fine.
There you go. Blimey, all that bad behaviour, it's quite an eye-opener. Sounds like the GB News staff room. My thanks to my fabulous panel. Really enjoyed their company tonight. Kezia, Peter and David. We are back tomorrow at 9, and we're looking forward to debating Nicola Sturgeon's legacy with none other than Anne Widdecombe, and a top SNP figure as well. But next up, it's Headliners. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Oh, Eamon.
Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us